Welcome back to Grilling with Grove. My name's Austin, and today what I got going for you is some beef back ribs. Now the way that I'm going to do these is we're going to put an all-purpose rub, then we're going to go on with some big bad beef rub, and then towards the end we're going to whiskey glaze them. So let's get out to the kettle and let's get to cooking. Here's what the beef back ribs look like. As you can tell, I've got some flies going on, but they don't really require a lot of trimming. I did have this piece of fat that was connected right there that I trimmed off just because that's going to burn in the smoker. But as you can see, there's not a lot of meat on these ribs, and that's because this cut of meat comes from the ribeye section where they cut the ribeyes out. And so they cut the ribeyes from right here, and this meat right here is like ribeye meat, but of course it's not very much because they want to cut as much for that ribeye as possible. So you have meat in between the bones on these set of ribs. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go on with some Tabasco chipotle sauce, and this is just going to be used as our binder. So just get that on there nice. And this doesn't really have any added flavor per se. We're just using it to help connect our rub. As you know, I always like to season meat side down first. So our first product that we're going to go on today is a light coat of It's Incredible from Heaven Made Products. So this is just a nice all-purpose seasoning. It's going to give some nice garlic, salt, pepper kind of notes to the rib. Next, we're going to go on with some big bad beef rub, and I've put it in a little container here, but this is from AmazingRibs.com, and it's a very good beef rub. You've seen me make it on my channel before, but it really brings out good flavors in beef, especially brisket. If you're going to do a brisket, I would highly recommend this rub. And then next, I've grounded up some coffee, and we're just going to sprinkle that on there as well. So we're going to go probably more liberal than you've seen other channels, because I do like my coffee and I want that flavor to kind of shine through. And that's why I've got it ground up separate from the other ingredients, because I didn't want to mix it with the rub. I want it to kind of shine on its own. So we'll let this backside sweat up, and then we'll do the front side, and we'll get back to the Weber kettle and get these on the grill and start cooking. Here's a look at our ribs. As you can see, I went generous with the coffee. Got a little temp probe. We got a hickory wood chunk, and we got some chips, both apple and mesquite. So these went on about 9:30 or so. It's been about 10 minutes, and we're just gonna get to cooking. While those ribs are getting happy in the Weber kettle, what we're gonna do now is make that whiskey glaze. So I did take the basis of this recipe from a book that I've read called Pitmaster. I'll leave a link down below in the description box and all the ingredients to the recipe. So let's get to the bowl and mix up our ingredients, and then we'll get it on the stove for cooking. First thing we're going to do is combine all of our dry ingredients. So we're starting off with ground mustard. We're going to go a teaspoon with all these ingredients. So ground mustard going in, and I'm just estimating. I don't have a teaspoon. And next we have some organic thyme, about a teaspoon. Some garlic powder. Now we have some coarse ground black pepper. Some smoked paprika, and of course the bottle is not open. There we go, smoked paprika. Some chipotle chili pepper. 1 teaspoon of chipotle chili powder. We have 1 teaspoon of ground allspice. And of course I need to open this bottle as well. some allspice. That has a really good smell to it. I don't usually use allspice in my barbecue rubs. That's a very good flavor. And we have 1 teaspoon of salt. And we're gonna go in with a teaspoon, some coffee as well. So let's go ahead and mix that up. So next, we're gonna go in with our wet ingredients, and we're starting off with a packed cup of light brown sugar. And you can argue with me later in the comments about whether that's a wet ingredient or a dry ingredient. But to make all our bakers happy, we're gonna call it a wet ingredient today. Next, we've got some grandma's molasses, and we're gonna go in with a cup of that. So 1 cup of grandma's molasses, and that is very dark. Next, we're going to go in with a 1/2 cup of some apple cider vinegar. That's 1 cup that I'm using, but I only filled it halfway, so 1/2 cup. So 1/2 cup of apple cider vinegar. And then we're gonna go in with some whiskey. So we've got some of the best whiskey on the planet here. Got some Maker's 46. So we're gonna go in a couple shots of that. Sure, that's 2 shots. So let's mix this up, and then we'll get it in a saucepan, and we're gonna reduce it down before we add a couple of other ingredients. Now we're preparing our next set of ingredients, and I'm going in with some ketchup, and I've got some ketchup that doesn't have any corn syrup in it. So we're just gonna go in with 2 cups of that. And I'm actually measuring this out because this is kind of like the base of the sauce. So there's 1 cup. And that about runs me out of ketchup. But here's a 2nd cup of ketchup. Now we're gonna go in with some stone ground mustard. And for that, we're gonna do 2 tablespoons. And I'm just gonna eyeball this. That's probably 1. And I guess I'm about out of that as well. We'll call that 2 tablespoons right there. Next, we're gonna go in with some W sauce, and it needs 2 tablespoons as well. One, 2. Now it says fermented chili sauce. I don't have fermented chili sauce, but what I do have is a small bottle left of some sriracha. I can't say that word, sriracha. So we're gonna go in with what we have left of our sriracha. And then I'm gonna put a little bit more of this Tabasco chipotle sauce in there as well. So probably about 2 teaspoons of the sriracha, and I'm gonna go a tablespoon of this Tabasco. Actually, I'm just gonna use the rest of this. So that's looking like a tablespoon and maybe 2 more teaspoons. So we'll mix this up, and then it'll be ready to add to our ingredients that are on the stovetop. So I decided to go ahead and go with a cast iron pan, but what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna put that first set of ingredients in, and then you're gonna wanna bring it to a boil, like it is now, and then lower the heat, and let it cook on medium for about 5 minutes. I'll get back to you when we add our second set of ingredients. So we've been going for a couple minutes, and this is very bubbly, but what you want to do is you want to just go ahead and keep stirring it. So now we're going to go in with our second set of ingredients. So now we're going to let this thicken up a little bit, and then I'm going to add some more whiskey to it in just a minute. So let's let this thicken, give it about 5 minutes or so, and we'll get back with you. So we're bubbling here, so we're about where we want to be. So I'm just going to add a couple more shots of whiskey. And that should be good. We're going to let this cook down a couple more minutes, and then we're going to store it in our jar and wait for those ribs to get done. All right, we've been cooking at 250 almost the whole time. It did get as low as 220 and as high as 276, but it wasn't for long, and I adjusted. These are what our ribs look like. We got some nice bark formation. That coffee has really done its job, and we've got some pullback from the bones. So after 3 hours, I'd say these are ready to wrap, and we're going to get these wrapped up and get some water in them so we can steam them and make them tender. So here's our beef rib, and I'm pretty impressed with the crust on this rib. I take it that's from the coffee. Anyway, we've got our butcher paper laid out. So what we're going to do is wrap this. We'll go from this side to this side, and we're going to fold it over twice. You want to remember which side the meat is on, because we're going to put it back on the grill the same way that we found it. So I'm just going to scoot this over to this side. Then I'm going to add some water as well. So we're just going to add just a little bit of water on the butcher paper itself, and then we're going to add some water on the ribs. And this is just going to facilitate that steaming process. So we got meat side up, meat side down, 1, meat side up, meat side down, and meat side up. So I'm going to put some additional water on top of the wrap here. We're going to cut off this excess, and we're going to fold it tight. Let me tell you, everyone, these ribs smell amazing. So the bark here is pretty set. It's a little bit wet, but not bad. We lost it in a little bit of places, but that's okay. So if you take a look at this rib, that probe just kind of slides through with very little resistance. So that's what you're looking for. Now we're going to get these back uncovered on the smoker, and we're going to hit them with our glaze for about 10 minutes. Okay, I have to say, I did go ahead and cut off a little bit of the dry rub rib. I hope you can pick up that moisture. Let me tell you, that coffee rub did its thing. It very much tastes like a Texas brisket that I've had from La Barbecue. Definitely plenty of juice. The rib has done itself. It's very tender. That coffee rub, very good. I can't wait to see what this glaze adds to it. So let's get to the grill and we'll glaze these up, and then we'll do another taste test. All right, the ribs have been on for about 5 minutes. And I brushed that glaze over the top of them. So we're gonna even it out just a little bit more. I see it's bunched up in a couple places. We're gonna let these go a little bit longer, and then we'll let them cool down, and we'll get to the second taste test of the day. All right, that whiskey glaze is set up. Let's get into the taste test. that is an outstanding rib. That whiskey glaze adds another dimension of flavor, but you still get that pound from the coffee. So you get that sweetness and then some whiskey and then boom, coffee rub. So if you've done a coffee rub and you haven't gotten the results that you wanted, I suggest that you sprinkle your rub and then you sprinkle the coffee. Also, I want to give a big shout out to a couple guys that inspired me for this cook, Corpse Grinder and Black Tibby. They're a couple of my YouTube subscribers. Thanks for subscribing and thanks for asking me a couple of questions. It really inspired me to do this video. Corpse, if you want a nice juicy rib, wrap them. You can use foil, you can use butcher paper, but that wrap definitely helps keep the ribs moist and juicy. Black Tibby, if you want to use whiskey in your cooks, go ahead and do that towards the end. It's got some sugar in it. Go ahead and use that glaze. That's a really good glaze for beef. It really brought out the beef flavor, really brought out the coffee. So definitely happy with this cook. All right, everyone, if you like what I'm doing today, go ahead and give me a thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment down below, hit show more, and you can see all the instructions on how I did this and the wrap up, how I felt about this cook. And then hit that bell for notifications and you won't miss us on another one. Cheers.